CNN just set itself up for a heap of trouble, you guys. You see, the network was found guilty by a jury for defaming Zachary Young, a U.S. Navy veteran. They basically showed him as illegally exploiting Afghans by charging ridiculous fees to be evacuated in the aftermath of the U.S. military withdrawal from the country. After a very chaotic trial that was held over 2 weeks in Florida, the jury ruled Young was to be awarded $4 million in lost earnings and $1 million in personal damages. And it also found that punitive damages were warranted against CNN. Before the jury could rule on the latter amount, CNN and Young reached a settlement. But let me tell you guys, it looks like this is just the beginning. President Donald Trump himself is already making good on the threats that he made to go after the media in court over what he describes as false or misleading coverage. We listed down 5 of the cases, and one of them is against CNN. And last but not least, it was just revealed that Jeffrey Epstein was offered a sweetheart plea deal by federal prosecutors in return for incriminating information that would lead to President Trump's impeachment. This, at least, is according to the late pedo's cellmate, and we got the audio for you guys later in this video. Definitely stay tuned for that, all right? Now, what I will say, though, guys, is they all thought that Trump was going to lose. So now he's letting the hammer drop, and with extreme prejudice, too. This is a big one, you guys. You're not going to want to miss it. So first, let's talk about this massive blow that the courts gave to CNN as they were found liable for a whopping $5 million in a defamation case. Here, watch this.
A Florida jury on Friday found that CNN defamed a U.S. Navy veteran in a 2021 story about people paid to rescue endangered Afghans following the Taliban takeover of that country. The jury in Panama City deliberated for more than 8 hours starting Thursday before ruling in favor of Zachary Young, who blamed CNN for destroying his business by showing his face on screen in a story about a black market of smuggling out desperate Afghans for high fees. The jury awarded Young $5 million in damages.
You have the verdict form with you?
I do. In the Circuit Court of the 14th Judicial Circuit in Fort Bay County, Florida, case number 22608CA, Zachary Young plaintiff versus Cable News Network Inc. defendant. Verdict form number 1. Do you find by the greater weight of the evidence that defendant CNN committed defamation per se against plaintiff Zachary Young? Yes.
I'm glad it's over. Feeling very, very, very good. Yeah, it's been a long 3 years, and to have the outcome that we wanted, which was vindication publicly, is an incredible feeling. And I'm glad that it's over, and we don't have to spend more years and more time arguing about the meaning of a word.
So Zachary Young, a security consultant, said that the CNN story destroyed his business and his reputation, so the court awarded him $5 million after a 9-day defamation trial. And actually, the money was supposed to be way bigger than that, actually. It's just that they reached the settlement to resolve the entirety of the case before jurors calculated punitive damages, which is intended to punish malicious conduct, and it could have added millions more dollars to the total award for an unspecified amount. Now, I've seen this settlement, but out of respect for Young and this verdict, let me just describe it to you guys. The disputed segment opens with Jake Tapper describing the U.S. government's evacuation of citizens. He goes on to say Afghans trying to get out of the country face a black market full of promises, demand of exorbitant fees, and no guarantee of safety or success. The sergeant then switches to CNN chief security correspondent Alex Marquette, describing the situation of a man located in the U.S. whose family remained in Afghanistan, and said that he found people on Facebook charging $10,000 per person to be evacuated. That's when Marquardt said, according to Afghans and the activists that they've spoken with, desperate Afghans are being exploited because of the exorbitant and impossible amounts charged, pointing to a LinkedIn post from Young advertising his services and chat logs between him and people inquiring about his business. But see, Young's company was totally legit. So in 2022, he filed the defamation lawsuit, arguing that the segment set up the false narrative that he illegally took advantage of the situation. He denies the assertion and said that he only assisted U.S. corporations and charities, which paid up to $14,500 for his services, that wanted to extract certain people from the country. CNN issued an on-air apology, issued a retraction, and also removed the segment, as well as all references to black markets made in relation to him. But then the network executives testified during the trial that a correction wasn't necessary. According to Young, the story rendered him unemployable since maintaining his security clearance involves investigations to identify criminal activity and financial difficulties. And well, CNN was lucky with that $5 million price tag. Young was actually seeking at least $15 million. A CNN employee says losing a high-profile defamation case this week might have been expected inside the network, but that didn't stop it from leaving a mark. Now, as a CNN employee told Fox News, being found liable for defamation and dishonesty, it is a bad thing. I mean, them saying such an obvious thing, it speaks a lot about the media company, right? But after he got his win in court, Young said he felt vindication. Now, something else worth noting here is despite the fact that the verdict was widely covered, CNN's own media unit, it really has only offered minimal coverage of the case. Gee, I wonder why. The whole thing was pretty damaging to the network. During the trial, Young's legal team revealed CNN's internal messages that repeatedly showed staffers expressing hostility toward the Navy veteran. It included one calling him an S-bag and an a-hole, and another one saying that he has a punchable face. It was also revealed that Alex Marquardt, the CNN correspondent who led the on-air report, he told a colleague that we're going to nail this Zachary Young MFer. Well, guys, I guess they were the ones who ended up getting nailed at the end, right? And like Young said, vindication. Drop a quick yes in the comments down below. Hit the like button if you guys appreciate the information that we're sharing with you guys on this update. And while you're at it, I highly recommend subscribing to the channel, tapping that notification bell too. All right, so let's get back to this. Remember when CNN's Jake Tapper was so glum when reporting about ABC having to settle with Trump for $15 million? Well, here's a clip.
We should note, Kristen, I don't want to overstate Trump's friendliness and genial attitude at this press conference, because this weekend ABC News agreed to pay $16 million, including legal fees, to settle a defamation lawsuit brought by Trump against the network and their anchor, George Stephanopoulos. And that obviously will not be the end of this campaign against the media, a legal campaign against the media. We heard him go after many other news outlets today. Take a listen.
Well, I'm going to be bringing one against the people in Iowa, their newspaper. We're filing one on 60 Minutes. We're involved in one which has been going on for a while and very successfully against Bob Woodward. We have one, very interestingly, on Pulitzer, because reporters at the New York Times, Washington Post got Pulitzer Prizes for their wonderful, accurate, and highly professional reporting on the Russia hoax.
We don't have time to go into all of that, but just to touch base on a couple. There's one of them is the people of Iowa, the Des Moines Register. That's because there was a poll that was inaccurate. Mm-hmm. The one on 60 Minutes is because they didn't like the editing that had been done to the Kamala Harris.
From Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I mean, this is wildly ridiculous.
Well, one of the things to keep in mind here is that Donald Trump feels like he won. I mean, this weekend, by having a settlement with ABC, one that many people did not think was going to come to fruition. They thought that this would end up in court, or that it would certainly not be a settlement in which ABC paid $16 million and issued a public apology, which was part of this, has been a situation which has empowered and emboldened Donald.
She said Trump feels like he won. Well, that's because he did. And now our president is pushing through with several recent lawsuits seeking damages against major publishers over what he describes as false or misleading coverage. And so basically, it's real simple. Quit defaming people and start being fair with their coverage. That's all Trump really wants from these companies. Well, guys, the world is teetering on the edge of a food crisis, and at the heart of the problem lies a seemingly unremarkable mineral called potash. Now, this potassium-rich substance is a critical ingredient in fertilizers, essential for helping grow crops stronger, survive droughts, fend off pests, and also to produce higher yields. Yet, despite its importance, potash has largely gone unnoticed by the general public until now. The story begins with a warning that's been echoing for decades. Overcultivation is stripping farmlands of the nutrients needed to sustain food production. Compounding this issue is a growing global population that the United Nations predicts will require a 70% increase in food production by 2050. That means doubling the world's current food output in just 2 generations. Now, this is a Herculean task under the best of circumstances, but the world's fragile food system faced a seismic shock back in 2021 when the United States imposed sanctions on Belarus Belarus, one of the largest potash producers. Then in 2022, Russia's invasion of Ukraine sent the supply chain into chaos. Together, Russia and Belarus control over 40% of the world's potash exports. When their supplies were disrupted, the impact was immediate and it was devastating. Prices soared from $300 to nearly $1,200 per ton almost overnight, leaving farmers scrambling to afford the fertilizer they desperately needed. Nowhere has this crisis been more felt acutely than in Brazil, one of the world's largest agricultural powerhouses. Brazil is responsible for producing 1 in every 10 plates of food consumed globally, yet it relies on imports for 98% of its potash needs. For Brazilian farmers, the skyrocketing prices have been a crippling blow, threatening their ability to grow the food that feeds millions. But in the face of this dire situation, a beacon of hope and the sponsor of today's video has emerged. Brazil Potash Corp. Listed on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker symbol GRO, the company's ambitious Autazes project could revolutionize Brazil's cultural landscape. Nestled near the Amazon River, the project aims to produce 2.4 million tons of potash annually once fully operational, enough to meet 20% of Brazil's current demand. While that's just a fraction of what's actually needed, it is a vital first step toward reducing Brazil's dependence on imports. The Autazes project isn't just a technical marvel, it's an economic game changer. By producing potash locally, Brazil Potash can slash shipping costs and delivery times. Whereas imported potash takes an average of 107 days to reach Brazil's farming regions, potash from Autazes will arrive in just 2.5 days. This efficiency will not only reduce the cost, but it will also provide farmers with a reliable and timely supply of this essential nutrient. The company has already secured significant backing. Mining company Franco-Nevada Corporation has signed on as a cornerstone investor, while the Amagi Group, one of the world's largest private soybean producers, has committed to a major offtake agreement. Additionally, Brazil Potash has locked in a 15-year shipping deal with Hermasa, granting exclusive transport rights to ensure the supply of the 2.2 to 3 million tons of potash annually. Leading the charge is Mayo Schmidt, who previously built Nutrien into the world's largest potash producer with a market cap of around $23 billion. Now, Schmidt's expertise, combined with a team that includes Brazil's former Attorney General, the former Minister of Agriculture, and a former senator of the country's largest farming region, brings unparalleled experience to the table. The potential for the Autazes project is immense. Currently, the mine's operations are based on exploring just 5% of the basin. Even at that limited scope, the mine has an estimated lifespan of 23 years. Now, if all goes according to plan, Brazil Potash could expand to 2 additional deposits nearby, significantly increasing its production capacity. The broader market outlook adds to the excitement. Analysts predict that the global potash industry will grow from $57.74 billion in 2022 to $93.5 billion by 2032, a staggering 62% increase. Investors have taken notice. Over the past year, more than 77 hedge funds have added potash stocks to their portfolios. Companies like Mosaic Corp, Archer Daniels Midland, and Nutrien Limited have seen their share prices soar, with some more than quadrupling in value. Even industry titan BHP is making major moves, investing $4.9 billion in the second stage of its Jansen Potash project in Canada, with total investments in the sector exceeding $15 billion. This flurry of activity underscores potash's growing importance in a world that is increasingly dependent on sustainable food production. And the stakes couldn't be any higher. As potash prices ripple through the food system, they threaten to push up food costs and lower the nutritional quality of crops, an alarming prospect for a world that's already grappling with hunger and malnutrition. But with the Autazes project poised to bring much needed relief, Brazil Potash is not just a company, it's a critical player in the global fight to secure our food future. In this unfolding story, the path forward is clear. By unlocking the potential of Brazil's own resources, Brazil Potash is offering a solution that could stabilize food supplies, empowers farmers, and protect millions from the threat of food shortages. The world will be watching as this story continues to unfold, and as Brazil Potash takes its place at the forefront of a new agricultural revolution. Investors should always do their own due diligence. This is not considered investment advice. So here's a look look at 5 of the cases and where they stand. So the first one here is the Des Moines Register poll lawsuit. Trump sued the Des Moines Register and its former pollster, J. Ann Selzer, in Ohio State Court over an opinion poll published ahead of the November 5th U.S. election showing Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris leading Trump by 3 percentage points in Iowa. You guys remember that? Yeah, a lot of people do. Trump, a Republican who ultimately won Iowa, accused the Register and Selzer of engaging in brazen election interference by manipulating the poll and leaking it to the Democratic operatives before publication. Second, the ABC rape comment lawsuit. That's right, guys. ABC News settled a defamation lawsuit brought to you by Trump on December 14th, agreeing to donate $15 million to his presidential library and issue a statement saying that it regretted comments about Trump made by anchor George Stephanopoulos. Now, Trump alleged in the lawsuit filed in March in federal court in Florida that George Stephanopoulos defamed him by saying that he had been found liable for rape. Now, to clarify things, Stephanopoulos was referring to a civil case brought against Trump by writer E. Jean Carroll, who accused Trump of assaulting her in a New York department store back in the 1990s. I know, it was a long time ago and she just now decided to bring that thing up. So anyway, a jury found Trump liable for defamation and abuse, but not to the R word, which is a separate offense under New York state law. So yeah, definitely not liable for that. Our president also denied assaulting Carroll and is appealing the judgment. Number 3, the CBS 60 Minutes Harris interview lawsuit. So Trump filed a $10 billion lawsuit against CBS alleging that the network deceptively edited an interview with then presidential candidate Kamala Harris to tip the scales in the favor of the Democratic Party in the election. Now, this was one that we all heard about. CBS aired 2 versions of the Kamala Harris interview in which she appears to give different answers to the same question about the Israel-Hamas war, one being more concise and less word salady than the other one. So Trump alleged CBS's editing of the interview violated the Texas Deceptive Trade Practices Consumer Protection Act, which makes it illegal to use false, misleading, or deceptive acts in commerce. Trump lawsuit number 4. The Simon & Schuster recording copyright lawsuit. So Trump sued Simon & Schuster in federal court in Florida, accusing the book publisher and author Bob Woodward of violating copyright laws through systematic usurpation, manipulation, and exploitation of audio recordings of Trump that the veteran journalist gathered during interviews. Basically, Trump is accusing these people of illegally profiting from the recordings by distributing them without his permission and taking them out of context to cast him in a poor light. And last but not least, you got the CNN big lie defamation lawsuit. A federal judge in July 2023 dismissed a $475 million defamation lawsuit that Trump brought against CNN over the network's use of the term big lie to describe his claims that he won the 2020 election and allegedly comparing him to Adolf Hitler. In his October 22 lawsuit in a federal court in Florida, Trump argued that CNN's repeated use of big lie and the Hitler comparison in a January 22 special report were intended to aggravate, scare, and trigger people. Well, that certainly did not work for them, did it? Fast forward to now, then presidential hopeful Donald Trump is now President Trump. And as president, Trump's going to have to watch out against these FBI smear campaigns against him, because it just came out that Jeffrey Epstein was offered a sweetheart plea deal by federal prosecutors in return to incriminating information that would lead to President Trump's impeachment. So here's the audio from Epstein's cellmate, ex-Westchester cop and convicted killer Nicholas Tartaglione. Listen.
He came back later that night. He just climbed on the bunk. He didn't say a word. I was reading a book. It wasn't my business. And finally, he said, you were a cop. What do you know about proffers and cooperating? I told him, I said, Jeff, it's pretty simple. That the the prosecutors, they caught a fish. They're not going to let that fish off the hook unless you give them a bigger fish. He said, yeah, well, that's what they said. I said, what do you mean? He said, they told me they'll let me plead out for something small, and I'll do just a couple of years at a camp if I can give them something on Trump, get him impeached. And I said, well, do you know Trump? He says, well, I know him, I met him, but we don't like each other. I laughed. I said, why? He said, Trump threw me out of a party at his place in Florida. Somebody threw you out. He said, oh, he got mad. I was talking to some girl. And by now I got wind of, what he was in there for. So I said, well, how old was the girl, Jeff? He said, oh, about 18, 19. So that was a cop. I said, Jeff, that means probably 14, 15. He said, well, he threw me out, and, I haven't talked to him since, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, I don't know anything. So, okay, he says, but the government told me I don't have to prove what I say about Trump as long as Trump's people can't disprove it. I said, yes. I said, he's the president of the United States. His people are the FBI. He said, that's what I said. And they said, no, the FBI is our people, not his people.
Well, there you go, guys. It can't get any clearer than that. Now, as Taglione put it, they're not going to let that fish off the hook unless you give them a bigger fish. Now, that was in a phone call with Jessica Reed Cross, a California-based self-described journalist who recorded the conversation and later posted it on her Substack. Now, what was really shocking about it was when he talked about Jeffrey Epstein saying that the government told him he doesn't have to prove what he says about Trump as long as Trump's people can't disprove it. That sounds kind of fishy, doesn't it? Legal experts told the Post that the purported Fed offer to Epstein sounded plausible. Alan Dershowitz is a close confidant of Donald Trump who represented him during his first impeachment trial. He said anything is possible when it comes to high-profile cases like this one. He called them career makers. According to Dershowitz, it could have originated at some point lower than the U.S. attorney or one of the middle-ranking officials at the Southern District of New York or even the FBI. But he said they're always looking to make cases. I mean, seriously, why aren't more channels talking about this? The FBI offering Epstein leniency in exchange for dirt on Trump, and it didn't even have to be true? Really? The depths that these people would sink to? I mean, unbelievable, guys. Maybe the FBI is the next organization President Trump's going to hit with a lawsuit. I really wouldn't be surprised. What do y'all think? Let me know in the comments, guys. But as always, thanks so much for hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. And I really appreciate you guys sharing these videos. You guys really do help me out sharing these videos on your social media platforms. I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. Take care and be safe.